A ceasefire that was supposed to end a war, is barely holding. Just hours after U.S. forces struck Iranian military sites, Iran fired back, launching drones at Bahrain, home to the U.S. Navy's Fifth Fleet. And in the Strait of Hormuz, a commercial ship was hit by an unidentified projectile. The question everyone in Washington and the Gulf is asking right now, is this the ceasefire dying in real time, or just the last convulsions before it holds? I'm breaking down exactly what happened, why it happened, and what it means for the region. Let's get into it. Here's the timeline, as reported by multiple outlets covering the region. Early Saturday morning, Iran launched a drone attack targeting Bahrain. Bahrain, which hosts the U.S. Navy's Fifth Fleet, said it came under attack from a number of Iranian drones and called it a clear violation of its sovereignty. Manama accused Tehran of destabilizing the region and undermining regional stability. This came just hours after U.S. Central Command carried out strikes on Iranian military targets, specifically surveillance infrastructure, communications systems, air defense sites, drone storage facilities, and mine layer capabilities, according to CENTCOM's own statement. And it didn't stop there. Hours after the Bahrain attack, a British Navy shipping monitor reported that a vessel in the Strait of Hormuz was struck by an unidentified projectile, damaging the ship's bridge. No one immediately claimed responsibility, but given the pattern of the last few days, suspicion quickly fell on Iran. This is part of a back-and-forth that's been escalating for days. Just before this, Iranian drones had struck a merchant vessel off the coast of Oman, and the U.S. retaliated with strikes the very next day. So this isn't a one-off incident, it's a pattern of tit-for-tat strikes. To understand why this is such a big deal, you need to understand what ceasefire is actually being tested here. The US and Iran are operating under a 14-point Memorandum of Understanding, which includes a 60-day truce and an agreement to reopen the Strait of Hormuz, one of the most important choke points in the entire global economy. We're talking about a waterway that carries roughly a fifth of the world's oil and liquefied natural gas supply. But here's the catch: Iran has been asserting unilateral authority over that strait, warning that safe passage is only guaranteed for ships that coordinate their routes directly with Tehran. That's a direct challenge to freedom of navigation, something the U.S. Navy has enforced in that region for decades. Iran's foreign ministry has pushed back hard, accusing the U.S. of being the one violating the ceasefire, and said its military would defend its sovereignty with all its strength. Meanwhile, U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance, who has led the American side of these negotiations, has publicly warned Iran that any violence would be met with more violence. So both sides are technically still committed to a truce, while actively trading strikes. That contradiction is the real story here. This isn't just a US-Iran story anymore. It's pulling in the entire Gulf. Since the war began in late February, Iranian strikes have hit multiple GCC countries, not just military targets, but civilian and commercial infrastructure too. According to Wikipedia's tracking of the conflict, Bahrain alone has recorded multiple fatalities and dozens of injuries since the fighting started, and the country's defense forces say they've intercepted well over 100 missiles and drones. One of the most serious incidents happened back in March, when Iranian munitions struck an oil tanker undergoing repairs at a shipyard in Bahrain, killing a shipyard worker. Human rights researchers who investigated that strike concluded it likely amounted to an attack on civilians and civilian infrastructure, language that in international law edges toward describing a war crime. Other Gulf states aren't staying quiet either. Kuwait has publicly condemned the drone strikes on Bahrain as reckless Iranian aggression and a direct threat to regional stability. That's significant. It shows Iran isn't just fighting the US anymore, it's alienating its own neighbors.
So where does this go from here? There are really three possible paths. Path 1 both sides de-escalate. The truce holds on paper, both governments keep talking, and these strikes become the growing pains of an imperfect ceasefire rather than the start of a full return to war. Path 2 Iran keeps testing the ceasefire's boundaries, especially around the Strait of Hormuz, and the US keeps responding with targeted strikes. But neither side wants a full-scale war, so this becomes a slow burn, tit-for-tat conflict that just simmers for months. Path 3 something goes wrong, a strike causes major U.S. casualties, or a tanker incident spirals into a shipping crisis, and the ceasefire collapses entirely, dragging in more of the Gulf states that are already getting hit. Given how fast this has moved just in the past week, attack, retaliation, another attack, another retaliation, Path 2 looks like the most likely near-term outcome. But Path 3 is the one to watch, especially around that Strait of Hormuz, because that's where an accident or miscalculation could turn a regional conflict into a global oil crisis overnight. Here's the bottom line: the US and Iran signed a ceasefire, but on the ground, this still looks a lot like a war that's just paused for breath. Drones over Bahrain. Ships getting hit in the Strait of Hormuz. Strikes and counterstrikes happening within hours of each other. The 60-day clock on that truce is ticking, and every one of these incidents makes it harder to believe both sides will actually make it to the finish line without a real breakdown. I'll be tracking this story as it develops. If you want to stay ahead of what's happening in the Gulf, make sure you're subscribed, because this is nowhere close to over. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.